I'm Ron Tucker, a co-director along with my wife Rebecca, who is out here. And I'll be the host for the next few moments. And this is An Evening with Gary Sinise. And thank you for Gary Sinise. We're honored tonight to have with us Lieutenant Dan himself, Gary Sinise. Thank you. And we want to give a very special welcome to General Walt Boomer, former Assistant Commandant of the Marine Corps. Warner Laughlin and Tony Macris are with us tonight. And Colonel Landon Thorne and his bride, Leslie, who are good friends and sponsors of tonight's program. Finally, I want to recognize my good friend, Jonathan Flora, and his daughter, Olivia, who are with us tonight. The first part of tonight's program will be the presentation of the Pat Conroy Lifetime Achievement Award, followed by a short talk with Gary about all things Gary Sinise and Forrest Gump and whatever else comes up in that conversation. And you're going to get a lot of talk about Forrest Gump, for sure. Presenting the award tonight is our inaugural winner of the Santini Patriot Spirit Award, Jonathan Flora. Jonathan is an award-winning writer, director, and producer with over 25 years of experience in the entertainment industry, including more than 20 years with Walt Disney Studios, working on Disney, Marvel Studios, Lucasfilm, and Miramax titles, which includes the blockbuster Marvel and Star Wars franchises. Jonathan has written and directed films, commercials, and music videos, including the acclaimed documentary, Whose Children Are They?, the groundbreaking documentary exposing the hidden agenda in America's schools, which premiered in theaters nationwide, and the award-winning documentary, Lieutenant Dan Band for the Common Good. A veteran of the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne, I won't hold that against him, Jonathan received the BSA and MSA from Ohio University. He serves on the advisory board for the Beaufort International Film Festival, served on the advisory board for the GI Film Festival, and is a member of the leadership program of the Rockies, and was the president of Disney Salute, supporting Walt Disney Studios, military veterans, and employees. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jonathan Flora.
Thank you so much. Wow, it is so good to be back in Beaufort. I see all these smiling faces, and you've all been so welcoming to me, but also all the filmmakers, and I really do appreciate that. Now, I am a writer, so I have a script. Now, please don't think it's because I have a lot to say, even though I could pack so much in, because we are talking about the Lifetime Achievement Award for Gary Sinise. But also, it's so I don't go off script and just keep talking too much. So please bear with me on that. Before we get started, I mean, we're obviously here to pay our respects and to honor Gary, but you think I would know page numbers when I pull them out. But we're also here to honor Gary and who he honors and we'll honor. So I'm going to ask, if you are able, can you please stand if you've served or are currently serving in the military, so we can recognize you. Thank you very much. And also first responders, we would appreciate that as well. Any first responders that are protecting us in our towns and cities, we want to thank you as well. Thank you. Now, again, it's a great pleasure to be here. You've blessed me with acknowledgement, but to be able to present this award tonight is something that I will always cherish. And I thank you for allowing me to be here on this special occasion. I also want to thank Ron and Rebecca for this opportunity, and congratulations on 18 years. It's amazing what you've done. Beaufort hugs and Southern hospitality unmatched. So I appreciate that. I also want to acknowledge Beaufort Film Festival because they're one of the few film festivals that creates a special place for military stories, including the Santini Award and also the Duty and Honor category that recognizes military first responders and their families. And it's also an honor to serve on the advisory board with retired Marine Captain and top #1 Hollywood military advisor Dale Dye and, of course, Gary Sinise. Now, I'd like you all to just stop and pause for a moment and think about an individual that you've seen reach out to those less fortunate or to reach out to those that are assisting others. And when you close your eyes and you think about that, if you see a name or if you see a face, just thank that person, even in your mind. And that name and face that comes to me is Gary Sinise, obviously. Now, Gary is somebody that has obviously been very, very successful in Hollywood. But Gary never became Hollywood. He never lost his small town roots and the values that that small town did. And what he does is he takes that celebrity spotlight and he pushes it off to him and he shines it on our real heroes, our brave men and women that are willing to sacrifice their lives and pay that last full measure of devotion. And that's something we can never take for granted. Now, Gary, you're probably wondering, why a Lifetime Achievement Award? Isn't that for old people whose careers are at their sunset? Well, that's not the case. What you have done, you have packed a lifetime of generosity into the years that you've been doing this, and we know that you're just getting started. Now, there's a line, yeah, please. There's a line from a movie called The Bridges of Toko Reeve where the question is asked by the commander as he's watching the heroism of his troops. He says, where do we get such men? America's been getting such men since the beginning when that ragtag army was told, do not shoot until you see the whites of the redcoats' eyes, all the way up to the sands and mountains of Afghanistan and Iraq. But not everybody who serves our nation wears the uniform. And where do we get such men? Well, in this case, we found this man from Blue Island, Illinois on the big screen. Now, some people may not know that Gary was a rock star before he was a movie star, before he was a rock star. So he and some buddies got a band together when they were in high school called Halfway Road, which is just a great name, by the way. But then also while in high school, he started noticing where all the cute girls are, and they were in drama class. So he tried out for West Side Story, and he got it. And that's all it took. He was hooked on acting. And us as moviegoers have been benefiting from his talent ever since. Now, interestingly enough, Gary's first feature film was a military movie, a World War II movie entitled A Midnight Clear, released in 1992, where Gary played the character Vance Mother Wilkins. But his best and most memorable character came just 2 years later in a little movie you may have heard of called Forrest Gump, where he played the role, and everybody say it together now. Lieutenant Dan. And as we know, much of Lieutenant Dan and Forrest Gump was shot right here in Beaufort. But it was Gary's bold and raw portrayal of the disabled and emotionally tortured veteran who Forrest Gump cheated him of his destiny that earned Gary numerous awards, including an Oscar nomination. But playing the role of Lieutenant Dan earned Gary so much more than acclaim from the entertainment industry. The military community and veterans took notice, especially those that had been badly wounded in combat, including the organization Disabled American Veterans. Now, a funny story that Gary shared with me once, that when he started showing up at some of these events, people were shocked that he had his legs. Because the CG was so good, they thought he was a double amputee. Now, even though Gary's been very involved in supporting veterans as far back as his early theater days in Steppenwolf, he had a play back there called Tracers. And I was just sharing this with some Vietnam veterans at the concert last night, that he would have veterans come in for free 1 or 2 nights a week, And then he would invite them down on stage to meet with the cast and talk about their experiences. And Gary tells me that that was absolutely life-changing for him because he saw the impact of realistically telling the stories of guys that have gone through their experiences in Vietnam. But it was another event that took his actions to an entirely different level, and that was September 11th. Following 9/11, and now with troops now being sent into harm's way, Gary decided to become even more active, devoting even more of his time and resources to supporting not only the men and women who were being deployed into combat zones, but also those who protect our cities and towns. He became great friends with a lot of the FDNY, got very involved with the firefighters that survived 9/11, but also a lot of the families that lost their family members during that cowardly attack. He helped raise funds for the Brooklyn Wall of Remembrance. If any of you have been there, or if you can go there, please go. They have plaques of all 343 firefighters that were killed, the Port Authority, as well as the NYPD. And the faces of the individuals are lasered onto each one of these plaques, so they're just not a name. You see the face of the individual, and that really brings it home. And now Gary was only getting started. And now I get to get a little bit personal here. I first met Gary in 2006 when I had a short film that won an award at the LA Film Festival, and Gary was a guest celebrity, and he came in and met all the award winners backstage. A few months later, in 2007, I'm on the advisory board of the GI Film Festival, and I'm being told that we're going to invite Gary because we want to present him with our first award. And I'm like, well, why are we presenting Gary with a military award? I had no idea what he was doing, what he did. And so he showed up, and we started talking backstage, and I learned all about his military support. I learned about the strong military lineage in his family. His grandfather, two of his uncles, including Uncle Jack, that had over 30-something combat missions in World War II, brothers-in-law. And so he's got a very strong military background. And again, even though he didn't wear the uniform, he's obviously serving our country. So I reminded Gary that we had met a few months earlier in Los Angeles, and he said, well, did you ever give me a copy of your movie? And I go, yeah, but I was one of a bunch of people giving you stuff that night. And he says, well, if you can get another copy to me, I'd like to see it. And I go, I never do this, but I just happen to have a copy with me. So I gave him a DVD, and to Gary's credit, he watched the movie. And he calls me a few weeks later, and he goes, you know, I think you and me might be on the same page about a few things. And so we just struck up a quick friendship. And during this time, I started learning more. And just when you're starting to like this guy, he goes, oh, and I got a band. You should come see me play. You're like, oh, man, an actor with a band. It's like when I just liking you so much, please be good. And you show up, and you're blown away. I mean, these are all, and some of you were at the concert last night. There were over 6,000 people there last night. So, you know, and now he's telling me that they had, you've had 550 appearances, I think, now with Lieutenant Dan, the Dan Band, and they're all across. Somebody keeps moving these papers around. That's when I approached, and I got so inspired by what he does, I wanted to share that inspiration. So I approached him about doing a documentary, and he's like, I don't think so. You know, that's not why I do this. You know, and I go, I know, but you're never going to go to my little small farm town, Ohio, and appear at the Pork Festival. And he realized that, you know what? Oh, this can be an extension of my work. And then so for a year and a half, I got to follow Gary and the band around, and going to, Kuwait and to Iraq and Germany and all across the U.S. And I saw what it meant to the troops. And we had our first premiere on the USS Intrepid with over 1,100 people, FDNY, NYPD, the Fighting 69th, and so many other people. And it was just so moving. And he ended up using that documentary to help launch the Gary Sinise Foundation. And it was like an hour-and-a-half infomercial, and I couldn't have been more honored, Gary, that you were using that to say, look, I'm not just coming up with an idea because I want to do something, but here's what we can do, and here's what I've been doing. And you've seen what Gary and the foundation has been doing now with Rise and these homes that they're building, with Snowball Express, where you're helping kids that have lost a parent in combat or exercise training. And then the Flights of Valor, where you take these World War II guys who tomorrow is not promised, and you get to take them down to the museum and show them how they're being honored and how much we appreciate that. And the day before the screening, I saw a young firefighter. He's like 20 years old. He had a Viking phrase on the back of his shirt. And he said, and the shirt said, "Words of praise nor a noble name shall not perish." And Gary, that's why we're here tonight, is to praise you for all the work that you do. But it's not just us here in the arena that want to share that. Check out the screen. We've got some other people that want to say thanks.
United States! Rick! Tell him! Please! For God's sake! Tell him what we got here!
Ain't no we coming. You got snake eyes.
It's today. Jimmy Shaker Day. I got to him once. I'll get him again. And when I do, I'm not gonna want money.
Christ!
I've been driving rigs a long time, convict. 4 or 5 million miles of road, hard road. Tell them I was tired. They just hire someone else. 1,000 miles by sundown, or the gang don't eat come sunrise.
Oh, I get to tend the rabbit.
We're gonna have a big vegetable patch. We're gonna have a rabbit hutch. And down in the flat, we'll have a little field
piece
of alfalfa
for the rabbit.
We have lost of radio contact.
Roger that.
Look, I'm gonna have somebody coming by here later, Lee.
Lady friend?
No, a producer.
What's he produce?
Film, movies, you know.
Movies? Motion pictures?
The press will crucify you. Damn it, you're not some county judge anymore, you're vice president. Well, I wouldn't be vice president if it wasn't for Tom. Ingratitude, Charlie, it's a cardinal sin.
To play concerts that people are going to walk out thinking it was better than they thought it was going to be. Because people don't have high expectations for an actor with a band, let's face it.
Lieutenant Dan, what are you doing here?
Well, thought I'd try out my sea legs.
Well, you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan.
Yes, I know that. You wrote me a letter, you idiot. Well, Captain Forrest Gump. I had to see this for myself.
Well, Lieutenant Dan Taylor, seems to me you should be standing at a rigid position of attention in front of a superior officer. Maybe I'll have to get back in your face again like I did occasionally when we were down in South Carolina. Wait, let me rethink that. It seems to me maybe I should be standing at attention to honor the newest recipient, the Pat Conroy Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations, buddy. And there you are, among plenty of your fans, being so honored on the 30th anniversary of a huge motion picture triumph called Forrest Gump. I don't think any of us knew at the time what a tiger we had by the tail with memorable characters like Forrest, Bubba, and especially Lieutenant Dan. You made that character a part of motion picture and military history. Most actors never get a chance at a role that lives and endures the way Lieutenant Dan has. And that's down to you. From the get-go, you wanted to perform accurately and memorably in honor of all Vietnam veterans. And you sweated bullets to be sure you did that. It takes a special kind of dedication and motivation to do that. What it takes is a Gary Sinise. Thanks for what you've done and continue to do for America's military veterans. They love you, and so do I. Well done, Lieutenant Dan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tim Gray. I'm the founder and president of the World War II Foundation. We're a nonprofit. We do documentary films on World War II. And I just wanted to say congratulations to Gary on this incredible award. When I think of Gary Sinise, I think of somebody who lives what President John F. Kennedy once said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And Gary has spent a good deal of his life doing just that. Thank you for all you do for our nonprofit foundation, and congratulations on your award tonight.
Sammy Davis, Medal of Honor recipient, also known as the real Forrest Gump. I'm here to honor Gary Sinise and the work that he has always done over the years for our military and our first responders. Gary has inspired me to be a better American. Thank you, Gary, for the love and the caring that you give all. You are truly an awesome leader, and I am always proud to work with you. Life is like a box of chocolates. And remember, you don't lose until you quit trying. Thank you, Gary.
Gary, my brother, congratulations on this nice Lifetime Achievement Award. Beaufort, South Carolina. A lot of great memories, brother. A lot of great memories. You know, what happens in Beaufort stays in Beaufort. I think that's Las Vegas. But anyway, I hope you're having a great time down there, brother. I'm so proud of you, and I look forward to seeing you when you get back. All right? Enjoy, my friend. Congratulations.
Hey, everybody. Tom Hanks here at the Beaufort International Film Festival Award. I'm going to say something about Lieutenant Dan. Lieutenant Dan Band will be playing a little bit later on, but the man who played Lieutenant Dan, my friend Gary Sinise. I am thrilled that he is being honored. He and I, he leading the way, had an extraordinary experience, as you might know, there in Beaufort. He and I became friends there. I was already a great admirer, and then had the good fortune in order to get to know him, not just as an actor and a peer, but also as a friend. Congratulations, Gary. I'm so glad that a moment is being separated out just for you and the incredible people there in Beaufort. Much love and have a great night.
Now, you don't do something because it's the right thing. It's the right thing to do. That's why you do something. Gary understands the difference of that. Gary also understands, as Thomas Campbell said, that the Patriot's blood is the seed of freedom's tree. Calvin Coolidge said, a nation that forgets its heroes is a nation destined to be forgotten. This will not happen on Gary's watch. I have witnessed firsthand faces lighting up with ear-to-ear smiles when Lieutenant Dan shows up to hang out with 50 sand-dusty Marines in a distant, forgotten FOB in Iraq. I've seen Gary's humility when a general tells him how much it means to his men and women in his air wing when Gary brings a small piece of home, of love to them. I witnessed as recently as last night a daughter and a wife love on their Vietnam vet when Gary's talking about how they were treated when they came home. I've seen the tears in Gary's eyes when he receives a letter from a mother or a father who just lost their son. And in the letter, they share a photo of their son taken with Gary and how much it meant to them to have met him, including in one instance when he received a letter from a Marine being killed by a sniper in a motor pool in Iraq, where Gary and I just stood a few days earlier. I've seen Gary shake hands with a warrior that has no hands. I've seen Gary hug a small, sobbing child who lost their parent. And it's not just me, but many, many people have witnessed your acts, Gary, and God sees them all too. Now quoting Gary, I believe we can never do enough to express our gratitude and give support to the men and women who willingly go into harm's way to keep us safe and to keep us free. But we can always do a little more. That's how Gary rolls. Thank you, Gary, for inspiring all of us to do a little more. And Gary Sinise, Lieutenant Dan, It is an honor to present to you the inaugural Pat Conroy Lifetime Achievement Award.
Thank you for everything that you've done, and especially all that you've done to bring honor and to Beaufort and to all of our veterans and first responders, and it's all the credit to you, Gary Sinise, and thank you very much. It was a great concert last night. We didn't get to go, but I saw the pictures, and there were 4,000 people were there and had a great time. And I want to thank the MCCS, Marine Corps Community Services, for that, and Colonel Bortnam and his staff for doing a great job. When we first found out that you wanted to do a concert, I asked them to help us with that, and they came through with flying colors. And thank you all for attending and showing support. Well, it's the 30th anniversary of Forrest Gump, and when that movie was made, here, I would imagine when filming in 1993, little did anybody know what was going to happen with the movie, number one. When did you realize that your life was changed from that role?
Well, I was, thanks for having me. Thank you for this. Pat Conroy, tremendous writer. It's an honor to receive the award in his name. You know, I desperately wanted to play that role when I read the script, but as it always goes, you know, there's 200 actors and only one part, so you never know what's going to happen when you go into audition. I auditioned for the part. I had done Of Mice and Men, and the producers and the director saw Of Mice and Men, and they asked me to come in and audition for the role. Having Vietnam veterans in my family and having worked with Vietnam veterans going back into the 80s, I just really wanted to play that part very badly, but I tried not to get too, you know, you try not to get your hopes up too much because you never know. But I went in, auditioned for it. I thought I did well. And then as soon as you get out of the audition, the actor goes to the first phone he can find and calls the agent and said, "Did you hear anything? You know, did they call you and tell you about, you know, how'd I do, you know?" And they say, "Well, yeah, they thought you did great. They thought you did great, and they're seeing other people and they're doing the thing and stuff." So 2 or 3 weeks went by, and I started auditioning for other things, and I got very close to a screen test. I screen tested for one thing. It was between me and Chris Isaak. You know Chris Isaak? So there was a movie called Little Buddha being done by Bernardo Bertolucci. And I screen tested for it, and so did Chris. Chris got the part. And then there was another movie I did, remember Wyatt Earp, that Larry Kasdan did with Kevin Costner? So I auditioned for Wyatt Earp, and I was this close to that, didn't get it. So you're just kind of, you know, depressed. You know. And then I got a call from my agent, and he said, "You remember that Forrest Gump movie? It looks like you're going to get that." And so, you know, you never know what's going to happen. You know, Wyatt Earp didn't do too well, and neither did neither did Little Buddha. So I got lucky. And then we got on the set, and we were having a great time. It was a great script. We did a lot of work on it to shape it and everything. But you never quite know, what's going on. I knew I had a great, a great team. Bob Zemeckis, tremendous director. Tom, of course. Michael T., Sally Fields, Robin Wright, and just a wonderful, wonderful cast. And we were having a great time making it, but none of us really knew what it was going to turn out like. And if you think about Forrest Gump, the nature of Forrest Gump is it's all these separate stories, right? Forrest goes over and he does the Lieutenant Dan thing, and then he's doing the Bubba thing, and then he's doing the Jenny thing, and he's doing the Mama thing. So none of us really knew what each other was doing in the movie. So, because we didn't work together, I did one little scene that Sally was in, and one little scene that Robin was in, but I didn't know what they were doing, for shooting. So it wasn't until we saw it all put together in a small screening room at Paramount, right before the big premiere that they had at Paramount. They brought us into a little screening room there, and the cast was there, and the producers and some of the creative people that made a movie. We watched the movie, and the lights came up. Everybody looked at each other with massive smiles on our faces because we knew it was good. And, of course, it was.
A couple of years ago, we had Dale Dye here, and we reached out to you to deliver some comments about Dale as we were honoring him. And I always remember the comments because you were really you went back. I've done a lot of interviews with veterans, and it's kind of like you go back to that moment, and you were remembering the in your face Dale Dye, the Marine, and you commented how you had some moments. Tell us about working with Dale there.
Well, Dale, I give Dale a lot of credit for helping to whip me into shape, as a military person. The military aspect of Lieutenant Dan was very critical because you want to see him as somebody that is very dedicated, strong leader. He wants a military career, the kind of guy you're going to follow, and we needed to establish that. And so Dale, coming from the military and working with actors and everything, he knows how to work with you to get you in shape for that kind of thing. So I gave Dale a lot of credit for pushing me in those early scenes. We went out to a boot camp out here and lived in the woods for 5 or 6 days. I don't know what it was, and the snakes and the ants and all of that was out there, rain and everything. And we lived out there and we trained and we did a whole boot camp with all the guys in the platoon. Remember the platoon? There's a scene where Lieutenant Dan goes walking down the road with his platoon. He tells them all to get down and shut up. That was the first scene that we did where we marched the platoon in. So they had been shooting, and we'd been living out in the woods, and now we're going to go and do the Vietnam stuff. We'd already done the shrimping stuff. I had a long hair wig, and, I had grown his facial hair, and then I had to, shave and go in the woods, get ready to be the, Lieutenant Dan. And Dale was good. That training was really, really important to get us kind of focused on what we were doing. But then when we were shooting, I remember Dale, he got in my face a little too much, sometimes. And I wasn't in a good mood that day. I had a 45 in my hand, and I almost threw it at his head. I was so mad at him, but it was good. He was mad because the gun got jammed when I was shooting it and stuff. And but Dale was good. We became really great friends, and we shared an experience in Forrest Gump that was very, very special. It's such a special movie. is beloved by so many people. It's lasted a long time, and we shared that together, and that bonded us for life. 30 years later, we're still pals, and he said some pretty good stuff up there.
Yeah, you did. I'm curious, how long after the film was out to general release was it that you realized that veterans were attracted to that role of Lieutenant Dan? I saw once where you had commented when you first was about to entertain the troops, part of the USO program, and it said they didn't know who Gary Sinise was, but they knew who Lieutenant Dan was. And
yeah, well, it was actually, that wasn't until I started going to the hospitals and visiting folks. But shortly after Forrest Gump opened, I got this call from a Vietnam veteran who was working for the DAV, Disabled American Veterans. And he called me up and said they wanted to present me with an award for playing Lieutenant Dan. And I didn't know what the DAV was. In preparation for playing Lieutenant Dan, I spent a little bit of time with one amputee. I went to the VA, did some things. But I didn't know, the Disabled American Veterans Organization at all. Yet, at the time, they were representing 1.5 million wounded veterans, going all the way back to World War II. And so they invited me to come to their national convention to present me with their National Commander's Award for playing Lieutenant Dan. And I was like, in fact, I wrote a book, came out in 2019, and the first page is all about walking out on the stage at the DAV. And the chapter, the prologue chapter of the book is called Stunned, because I was stunned when I walked out on the stage, and there were 2,000 wounded veterans in the audience, and they were all, they had shown some clips from Forrest Gump right before I walked out, and all these wounded folks were, applauding, and I took my breath away, and I was really not prepared in a way for that kind of reception from all these real-life Lieutenant Dans out there. So it really did something very profound, that day in August of '94, just maybe 5 weeks after the movie came out. And from that point on, I stayed actively involved with the DAV in supporting them, and have been ever since for 30 years, supported them and tried to help them. And I've met extraordinary people, wounded veterans from the DAV, and it prepared me, I think, very well for what would happen after September 11th, 2001, where we had this whole new generation of wounded coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And I, having been involved with the DAV and meeting many of our wounded, I started going to the hospitals and meeting them, and somehow, and that's when you say they didn't know who I was. That's exactly right, because I would walk in and they would just call me Lieutenant Dan. They wouldn't have a clue what my name was. That's it. They didn't know what my name was at all, but they knew I was Lieutenant Dan, and I was there for them, and that was important. And I learned quite a bit. And it was shortly after we started deploying to Afghanistan and Iraq that I started doing that, and that just led to all these things. Just kind of, these were all seeds that were being planted for what I would end up doing, as a life mission for supporting our veterans.
Now, you had mentioned that you, when you first wanted to do something, you wanted to recognize the veterans in some way. You started calling the USO. You couldn't get a call back.
They didn't know who Gary Sinise was either, you know. Yeah, but so I called him. I left like a couple of messages for the USO and said, you know, I want to go to Iraq. I want to go on a tour. I'm Gary Sinise, and I want to go on a tour and visit the troops and all. And finally, I left a message. I finally figured out they don't know who I am. So I said, I'm the guy that played Lieutenant Dan. I want to go on a tour. And then they called me back after that.
Well, it was 2003, I believe, the first when Lieutenant Dan started performing, and then it kind of swelled from there. I mean, I saw a comment where you told the troops that I've probably been to more bases than you have, and so you've performed for literally probably millions of troops and families, and it's got to be something very special. So, how do you make it? How do you do it? Number one, how do you make it so special every single time you go? It's almost as if it was the first time you had done it, and you are so genuine with everyone, and everyone wants to gravitate to you and thank you, and it's just something you continue to do, and everybody appreciates that.
Well, one thing you have to remember, I make my living as an actor, but not as a musician. I'm a part-time bass player who plays for the troops, and that's basically the only time I pick up the bass is to go play for the troops. So it's a real joy for me to get up on stage and to play music. I never in a million years thought 25 years ago when I started doing that, that I would be doing it as much as I continue to do, or that it would turn into a part of a broader mission of service. And the band became another part of the mission. I remember one of my first USO tour, in fact, it was the first USO tour that I did to Iraq. It was June of 2003. And it was we went into Iraq in March of 2003. In April of 2003, you'll remember, some of you will remember the moment where our troops tied the chain around that statue in Baghdad of Saddam Hussein and pulled it down. That was in April of 2003, and in June of 2003, I was there on the very first USO tour to Iraq, and it was a giant tour. And this was a big tour. I mean, Northwest Airlines gave us a 747, and there was 180 people on the plane. There were all kinds of entertainers. Kid Rock was on there, Leanne Womack was on there, Brittany Murphy was on the trip. God, I mean, it was, Robert De Niro was there, he showed up. I don't know where, he walked out, there he was. Football players, cheerleaders, basketball players, rappers, I mean, it was country singers, it was a giant tour. And that was the tour that when I said, I'm Lieutenant Dan, they called me back. They put me on that tour. So I got to go as Lieutenant Dan on that tour, and I got to see Kid Rock rocking out for everybody, and Leanne Womack sang, and rap artist band Nappy Roots was there, and it was just a gigantic entertainment tour, and we spread out all over the place over the course of about 6 days, and we saw a lot of folks. And I had a group of musicians that I played with, for fun, and right before I went on that tour, I put them together in a little place in Chicago, and we invited the local USO folks in Chicago to bring some sailors over there. Great Lakes Naval Base is up there, and so they brought some folks from some of the local bases, and we played. We kind of jammed for them. So my first little show for the troops was right before I went on that Kid Rock tour, and I saw what Kid Rock was doing, and all the troops were, they're going wild and, doing that thing, And I thought, well, I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. So then, as soon as I got back from that big tour, I called him up and I said, I want to go on another tour. And I went to Italy and did a whole thing in Italy. I flew on an F-16 that trip, and we saw troops all over the place. I came back. I said, I want to go on another one. In August, I went to Germany, did a whole tour, USO. This is just me shaking hands and taking pictures. And every time I went on one of those USO handshake tours, I would say, I have some musicians that I play with. We could play. So finally, after 6 or something handshake tours, they finally gave in and they said, okay, we'll send you, you can take your band. They did, surprisingly, they didn't ask me for a CD or anything like that. They just at that point, they trusted me and they liked me. So they set up a tour for about as far away as you could get, down to a little island in the Indian Ocean called Diego Garcia. They sent us there to see, let's see what kind of feedback we get on them. So we went there, and we also went to Singapore and Korea on that tour. And they came back, and I said, I want to do it again. And so we went out again. We did a kind of a bus and truck around the States. We went to Goodfellow Air Force Base in Texas. We went to Kirtland in New Mexico, and we went to Fort Polk as well. Swampy there. But that was the beginning of me taking the band out, and we were getting we were pretty like kind of a garage band at that time. But as time went on, I kept, different people would leave. I'd bring in better players, and I would have to find ways to pay everybody and all of that. And then when I started the Gary Sinise Foundation, the band became kind of a program of the Gary Sinise Foundation. I always say, when you donate to the USO, one of the things the USO is going to do is going to provide entertainment for our military around the world. So one of the things you do at the Gary Sinise Foundation is, by donating to the Gary Sinise Foundation, we can provide that entertainment to military bases all over the place. So we pay for all the shows from the very beginning. I think we've done 550 shows, something like that.
Well, speaking of the foundation, what was the spark? When did you realize that this was something that you felt needed to be done to start the Gary Sinise Foundation?
To start the foundation, well, one of the, I wanted to do, as I started doing this, I could see that just, showing up was making a difference. It was actually helping somebody. If I did a bunch of tours and visits and didn't seem like anybody didn't make a difference or didn't make an impact or have a positive effect on somebody, then I might not have kept doing it, of course. But I did see that walking into a room with, somebody missing their legs or in a hospital bed, and the mood changing when I would go in there, I could see that it was making an impact. I remember being over in Germany and walking into a room. There was a guy had been blown up. Actually, he wasn't a soldier. He was working at the embassy in Baghdad when the embassy was blown up, and it had just happened a couple days before I got to Landstuhl in Germany, and his daughter was standing over him, and he was not aware. But she was just there, and tears in her eyes. And I kind of crept into the room, and her whole face changed. And she lit up and she started talking. She told me about her dad, and just the whole mood changed. And that happened room after room after room after room in all these hospitals that I would visit, and I would see what's showing up, and just, showing that you care could do for somebody. So then I just wanted to do more of it. And I just wanted to do more and more. And I would reach out to different nonprofits and find out what they were doing and how I could help raise awareness for them, by doing PSAs or fundraisers, show up for a fundraiser or something like that. And I felt that by reaching out to all these different nonprofits that were in the, helping first responders, helping military, helping families, all these things, if I could help them, then they could help a lot more people. If I could help raise more awareness for what they were doing. So we would get more done that way, and then at a certain point, I just kind of went, I think I'm in, So I'll start my own foundation, and that's when the Gary Sinise Foundation was launched.
Great. This past December, you took several thousand, it seems, young families to Disney World, and for an event, part of the foundation called the Snowball Express. And how did that start? How did you come up with the idea to say, let's do something for these Gold Star families and these young children and wives and husbands that need to go and just get their minds off of it?
Well, that was not my idea. I did not start that. There was an event held in Anaheim at Disneyland in 2006 where a group of people local to that area, Southern California there, wanted to help the children of our fallen. And so they raised enough money and got some airlines to come in. Southwest was one of them. In fact, one of the guys who was a part of getting that started was a Southwest pilot. American Airlines came in, provided some tickets at that time, brought them in, and they made a video of that first event where they brought all these Gold Star kids to Disneyland right before Christmas. And shortly after that, they knew I was doing stuff for the military, and they called me up and asked if they could come and talk to me. And so they came to my office at CSI New York. I had an office at CBS Radford in Studio City. And they came to the office, they showed me the video, and I said, okay, can I donate my band to play at the next one? They said, we want to do this again, and we would like your help. And said, okay. So I said, I'll donate my band and come to the next one. So in 2007, I went to Anaheim and played a concert for the kids at the Grove Theater in Anaheim. And I didn't know, all I knew was these kids had lost a parent, Didn't know too much about it at all. I mean, nobody knew too much about it except the people that had done it the first time. They wanted to keep doing it. American Airlines was getting more involved at that point. I showed up, and it was remarkable. In fact, Jonathan right there. So in fact, Jonathan had asked me about if he could follow me around and, document some of these things I was doing. And it just so happens that and that was the fall of 2007. And I said, okay, well, the first thing I've got on the agenda for you is I'm going to go down and do this concert for these kids who had all lost a parent. And they're calling it Snowball Express. So the first thing Jonathan shot for the movie was the event and my concert. And then he interviewed some of the people while he was there and stuff like that. So that's in the movie. And then I just kept volunteering to do it every year. I would go back and back. We eventually moved it out of Anaheim. We moved it to Dallas because American Airlines, that's their hub. And American was getting more and more involved with it and becoming a bigger and bigger sponsor. And so we moved it to Dallas in 2009. The first year it was done in Dallas, and we stayed there for quite a long time until we started talking about, I had been narrating a show at Disney World since 2000. It's called the Candlelight Processional. Has anyone ever seen that? It's a wonderful show at Christmas time with an orchestra and everything. And I'd been narrating there, and I'd done some movies for Disney, and so I had a really good relationship with Disney. I started talking to the folks who were running Snowball in Dallas about moving it to Disney World. And it was going to cost a lot more money to do that than they were going to be capable of. At this point, my foundation was rocking and rolling pretty good. So we decided to, in 2018, to bring that thing, Snowball Express, into the Gary Sinise Foundation as one of our central programs. So from 2018, 2019, we did events at Disney World, over 1,000 kids, their guardian, their surviving spouse. We'd take over a hotel, 800 rooms, all that. We had to raise additional money. We did all that. Then in 2020 and 2021, of course, the whole COVID thing and all that. So we put together a virtual Snowball Express where all these families, because now you've got all these families, these kids just looking forward to this event every year. It's such a healing event for these children because they've all lost a parent. They're all sharing the grief of losing somebody in military service. And they may go to their little towns around the country, and maybe they're the only kid that's had that happen. But when they get together at Snowball Express, there's 1,000 other kids that are all experiencing the same loss, the same grief, and they're all being treated like great, we treat them so well, and we give them such a great time, and there are hundreds of volunteers. So we went virtual with it in 2020, 2021, and so you'd have, all these kids, hundreds of kids online, watching our virtual show that we did for 3 days, and we had all these events and all these things you could do online, and then 2022, we went back to Disney. We were there again in 2023. And since the Snowball has come under the Gary Sinise Foundation, we've expanded it quite a bit. So we not only do the one annual event with the children, but we do events throughout the year, throughout the country, for kids all over the country. We've expanded it to include children of fallen first responders. So this year we expanded it. We did 2 events back to back at Disney World. It ain't cheap, Mickey doesn't work for free.
Well, the program is far-reaching, and it reached Beaufort this year, and we have someone who was at the Snowball Express here, Natalie Clark, and she has a few words she wants to say.
Oh, hi.
Well, there's the kids right here. Hi. How are you doing? You've heard my band, right? This is the family right here?
This is my mom, and this is my father. He is a Vietnam veteran.
Oh, Vietnam veteran, right here. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Natalie. That was a surprise. And it was a surprise to me when we made contact recently.
This
so.
is Natalie.
Natalie.
Yeah.
And
Natalie's going to sing for us. She's got a microphone.
We're so grateful for your organization and the connections and bonds that we formed with other surviving families. It truly means so much. It's incredible. And, of course, my children absolutely love Disney World, and I just love to see the survivors because that's truly where our healing takes place. And that's what we look forward to. And we're very blessed, and we're so grateful and so thankful. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you.
now, beyond that, I ran across this term, and restoring independence, supporting empowerment, RISE. How did that, I'll let you tell what RISE is.
So, yeah, you saw on the video earlier, that was kind of focusing on our RISE program. RISE is all about specially adapted smart technology homes, home modifications, mobility devices, modified vehicles, all these things to provide independence for those that have been wounded in military service. So we've done, so we provide these specially adapted homes, and they're built, each one is kind of specific to the needs of each one of our wounded service members that we're working with. And since the very beginning, we've done, I've been involved in 90 of these houses since the very beginning. The very beginning was, thank you. So, the way that I got involved with it was, as Jonathan mentioned earlier, after September 11th, I started getting involved with the FDNY in New York and supporting them in various ways. On my first trip to Iraq, I actually sat down next to a gentleman who'd lost both of his sons at the World Trade Center. One was a police officer, the other was a firefighter. And I sat down, we were going on a C-130 on the way from Kuwait to Baghdad, and I sat down next to him. He had a button on his shirt, and it had firefighter and a police officer on it. I said, "What's that?" And then he told me the story. And he took the button off and he gave it to me. And he reached into his bag and he pulled out an FDNY hat. So I took my USO hat off and put the FDNY hat on. We became fast friends, and he invited me to come to the station house where his son was serving. They lost 6 firefighters at that house in Brooklyn, and so I went probably 3 months after we got back from Iraq, and we just became fast friends. He introduced me to all these members of the FDNY. I started raising money for them in different ways. And one of the things with this Brooklyn Wall of Remembrance, that was a memorial there. Well, I was becoming very familiar with a lot of the members of the FDNY. I was shooting CSI New York in New York at, we actually faked it. We would shoot in Los Angeles and go to New York like once a year for a week. Shoot a bunch of scenes, there's the Brooklyn Bridge, and there's the Empire State Building, and, they must be in New York. And so we were shooting outside what used to be Shea Stadium, and we were shooting out there, and the commissioner of the fire department came over to my set. And so I was getting pretty friendly with a lot of those folks. And the commissioner at that time, his name was Sal Casano, and Sal came over to the set, and he brought some folks. And he said, can we talk to you for a second? And he said, there's a soldier from Staten Island who was blown up in Iraq last spring. This was, we were shooting the fall, and last spring, the soldier was blown up. He lost both arms and both legs. And I said, I know who you're talking about, because I went to see him about a week after he got to Walter Reed. And his name's Brendan Morocco. And Brendan, they asked me, I had already done a concert to raise money to build the Brooklyn Wall, this memorial, and they asked me if I would help them raise money they wanted to build him a house in Staten Island, a specially adapted house that would kind of make life easier for him. And so I said, absolutely. So we set up a concert, and we did a concert, and unfortunately, when we were in the planning stages for that concert, a Marine was blown up and lost both his arms and both his legs. And I heard about it, and I said, we're gonna have to do another house. So I did a concert. His name was Todd Nicely, and he wanted to live in Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri. So I did a concert in St. Louis to raise money for Todd. And then, unfortunately, there was another quadruple amputee. His name's John Peck, and he's a Marine, and he got blown up. We raised money for John, built him a house. Then there were two more quadruple amputees. One named Travis Mills, the other Taylor Morris. All five of these guys had lost both arms and both legs, and so we built them all houses. And I did concerts, for 3 out of 5 to raise money for them. And then we raised the rest of the money in other ways for the other two. And that started this ball rolling to try to make life better for those that were being, tragically, severely wounded in combat. So, there's many, and once I started the Gary Sinise Foundation, I wanted to have a program that was specifically focused on providing ways that we could help with their independence and empower them to live a full life without worrying about a mortgage, worrying about bumping into walls with your wheelchair, or trying to get in and out of the bathroom, all these things. So we put all that stuff in these houses that makes things a lot easier. Sometimes somebody can't, somebody needs one of those cranes, and we put them on the ceiling, and the caregiver lifts them up, and the crane will take them from the bedroom all the way into the bathroom and put them in the shower. Whatever is necessary to just make life easier for these families. They have clearly given a lot and sacrificed a lot, and so the American people helped me do that, and we're proud of the program. We have several people, unfortunately. There's several in the queue for houses right now. We'll probably we'll hit close to 100 houses by the end of the year, and we'll keep going as long as there's a need for it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for doing that. When I was growing up, when I was in high school, Vietnam was raging, and I would watch the Bob Hope shows with all the guests and how the troops responded, and you'd have comedians and would have bands, would have Connie Stevens, who I met at a film
And
festival
Margaret.
years ago. And when people refer to you as the Bob Hope of the modern generation, how do you feel about that? I mean, Bob Hope was an icon, and Gary Sinise is an icon, and but you got to. I mean, that's good company. I mean, it was something from my generation in the late '60s that I always remember, and I'm sure that the generation after us will remember Gary Sinise the same way.
Well, Bob Hope, he set the bar very high, you know, for any entertainer, and he had it in his heart that it was going to be a part of his life to bring some home to people overseas. I mean, if you, he wrote a book called I Never Left Home. I think it's his very first book, written after his first tours to the war zones during World War II. And when you read the amount of, 200 performances in one 2 or 3 month tour, and if you think about those tours, you know, trying to get there, you know, in the 40s, you know, was very, very difficult for, you know, for him schlepping around his little entertainment troupe trying to get to these bases all over the place. So it was very, very difficult, and, you know, he's going to places that were, you know, very dangerous, and he set the bar high for commitment. You know, and he wouldn't have done that if it wasn't just something that felt, you know, he felt a great reward for himself spiritually and emotionally, you know, because I know for me, I mean, like I said, if I didn't feel that it was making a difference and that you were having an impact and that you were bringing some light into a dark situation, then you know, why would you do it? Why would you continue to do it? You're not getting paid for it and all of that. So like Bob, I just felt kind of called to do it at a certain point. And the more I did it, the more I wanted to do it. And then I realized that at a certain point, look, you know, there will be a time where I can't do it as much, but I don't want the mission to stop. And so I want to have an army of people to carry the mission on every day. It's their job, their mission, their, you know, daily focus to impact people positively who are serving our country. And that's why I started the Gary Sinise Foundation. I wanted the American people, I thought I'd built up a pretty good reputation at that point for being committed to it, and I thought the American people would trust it. And I wanted them to trust me, and because I wanted them to feel comfortable about providing us with donations, large or small, and everything in between, whatever it is, so that we could provide these services. Now I have a great team of people. You know, it's their day-to-day. That's their job, you know, is to go out there and do, you know, I kind of want people to see what service and volunteerism can lead to. Service and volunteerism is a great healer for broken hearts. You know, we all know that when we see us do something for somebody and it lights up their face, then our faces light up and we feel better. My heart was broken after September 11th. I felt terrible. The images were, are all embedded in my head from that terrible day. And I wanted to do something, take action and do something. And like Bob, I'm an entertainer, what can an actor do? Well, I raised my hand for the USO, and that's how it started.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you did that. I read a couple of times your book, A Grateful American, and when did you feel the urge or the need to write the book, to tell the story?
Well, my agency has a literary department, and one of the agents there, her name's Kate Hoyt, she started planting that seed in my head. Why don't you write a book? And so I at a certain point I started thinking, well, what would I actually write about? And then, I could document some of these things that I've talked about today, some of the trips and whatnot. Then I started thinking broader about how I got to that point and what life was like before and now what is life like. So I started going back, pretty far to the military in my family, kind of tracking some of the things that they had done and how I grew up as a kid, and then the theater work and the acting work and how that all kind of led to the service work. So, and that's why the book is called A Journey from Self to Service. It's because it is. How did I get so involved in service work? Well, there were many seeds. When you read the book, there's these little seeds that are kind of planted along the way that all of a sudden start making sense to me later on. And then I thought, well, right before I turned the book in to the publishers, I didn't know what it was going to be called. And then I just kept rereading it, and this theme of gratitude just kept coming out. There's a bunch of things that I talk about that I'm grateful for, and certainly grateful for the men and women who serve our country and for the freedom they provide. And it just, all of a sudden, it was like, I'm a grateful American. That's what the book is.
Yeah. And I highly recommend that book. It's a great read, and you really fully understand Gary Sinise and why you do what you do. And it's a very telling book as well. Just to go backward a little bit, back to Forrest Gump. And you spent quite a bit of time here, and I'm thinking you probably ate a lot of shrimp. Jimmy Stanley, I don't know if Jimmy is in this audience, but he told the story of how he climbed the rig on the boat, and then I guess at that point someone got the idea, said, yes, we can put Lieutenant Dan up there. And that's when you had your moment. And how did that all come about? When they said, you got to go up there and do this, you remember that night when you were filming that scene?
Yeah, the hurricane scene?
Hurricane scene.
I remember that night, yeah. We were in a dock somewhere, one of the docks out here, and they had the way they set it up was, we were parked like right next to the dock. You can't see the dock in the shot, of course, but they had two guys, a bunch of guys on each side of the boat, kind of pulling the boat so the boat was rocking, and then they had these big giant Ritter fans These are fans that we use in the movie business to make wind and blow things around. And so they had 2 or 3 of those blowing. And then Bob Zemeckis thought it would be really cool to have a DC-9 jet engine blowing at me. So over here, there's like a DC-9 jet engine blowing at me. And then there's all these water cannons, like shooting water everywhere. And it was crazy. And they say, and Gary, you're going to be up there. So I said, okay, let's do it, Bob. Come on. And I remember, Lieutenant Dan is screaming at God, and he's screaming his head off up there. And there's all this noise, of course, from the fans and the jet engine and everything like that. So at one point, I'm screaming up there, and at one point we was turning everything off, and we getting ready to do another take, and Bob says, Gary, you don't have to scream. We're going to have to redo all the sound later anyway. You don't have to scream. And I'm like, Bob, how am I supposed to act if I'm not screaming? You can't pretend you're screaming. You have to scream if you're going to scream. So thankfully, I had about a week off after we shot that, because I had no voice left whatsoever after we shot that scene.
And you obviously remember what Frogmore stew is.
Yes, I do. I had some today.
Oh, did you?
I went to the Foolish Frog today.
Foolish Frog, okay. And the shrimp is really abundant here, and there's many ways to fix it, as Forrest said.
Don't start that. The Bubba thing, yeah. Can I tell another Forrest Gump story?
Sure.
So Fripp Island. They all probably know all these stories.
I don't know.
So I was staying in a condo on Fripp Island. That's where I stayed when we were shooting, and that's where we actually remember the battle scene in Forrest Gump. Everything blows up, and bombs and guns and shooting and all of that. Well, there was this forest in the middle of the golf course on Fripp Island. And that's where they built the battlefield. So we were blowing things up inside the forest, and just outside the tree line, they're teeing off and hitting golf balls. They were swinging the... Can you imagine if you're about to hit your shot and the bombs start going off in the forest? That was crazy. Yeah, one big take of that, because they worked all day to get all the bombs set and all the choreography, and for the cameras to know what they were doing. We had 7 or 8 cameras shooting everything, and all of a sudden it was like action, and the bombs start going off, and I'm screaming, and they run, Forrest, run! It was crazy.
Well, there's actually a bench on that golf course near there, and it has a plaque that says, "On this spot, Forrest saved Lieutenant Dan."
What?
Yeah. I was on it. I played that course. I said, "I'll be," and there's a placard, and sure enough, and it's in the video I'm going to send to you.
You're kidding?
Nope. And they talk about that very spot, and anybody that plays golf there on that spot, they see that bench.
Well, they're still playing golf over there.
They're still playing golf.
That's good.
But in 30 years, it's been since you were in Forrest Gump, and now July 6th will be the actual 30th anniversary of the film. There's no way that anybody could have known the impact that the movie would have had on American culture. I mean, everybody has seen that movie, and everybody remembers Lieutenant Dan. And Lieutenant Dan and Forrest and Bubba, I mean, those are characters that are going to live probably forever. And I think that as you go on another 30 years playing Lieutenant Dan, I think that is going to stay with you, and is going to be your legacy, as well as not just the Forrest Gump, but everything that was born from that film. And I think today, more than anything, I think we show appreciation for the movie because it presented us the Gary Sinise that is here today. And I think you...
Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
And I genuinely feel that Gary Sinise and Lieutenant Dan is there, but Gary Sinise is the one making all this happen. So I'll thank you for that. And
thank you, Ron.
And it was our honor to really give you some recognition tonight in the town where we feel that Lieutenant Dan was born. It was right here. And I thank you for making the time to come see us tonight. And the name of Pat Conroy Lifetime Achievement Award, we haven't given that many, and I've wanted to get Gary here for a long time, and Gary has helped us several times with the film festival. He's the most giving and generous person that I can tell you that has helped us, and a lot of times, most of the time, through Jonathan, has helped get that. In 2014, we honored Arthur Schmidt, who was here, and you gave us a video for Arthur Schmidt, and he really appreciated that. And when we interviewed him, actually it was more than an interview, we took him to a local restaurant, the little quick story on Arthur. He was here, we gave him his award on Valentine's night, and it ran late, and Beaufort, there's hardly any place to eat after 9 o'clock. So his wife came up and said, Ron said, it's Valentine's night and we really wanted to have something to eat. Is there some place? And Evelyn Stevenson sitting over there said, yes, IHOP is open. So Evelyn and Forrest Gump, Paul Dingler, all got into their van and drove to IHOP. and Arthur Schmidt told me the next night, he said, that was interesting because Forrest never came out of character. We're sitting at IHOP and he's still Forrest Gump. And it was great. And then that night, the next night, Arthur's wife came over and said, honey, don't worry about that because I enjoyed IHOP and I learned something. I didn't know you could get anything but breakfast there. So, and we talked about the film and the making of the film and how important an editor was in making every character come to life. And he talked about some transitions that he had asked Robert Zemeckis. He said, I couldn't get there from there to here. I need a transition, so they would send someone out and shoot some B-roll and things of that sort. And as far as Forrest Gump, and he said, how was that working with Forrest? He said, it was great, but we had to de-gump him a little bit. He was a little bit too gumpy. But he also talked about working with you and Bubba and all those characters, and it was really great to hear those stories coming from the man who helped create the movie.
Oh, beautiful job too.
He passed away recently, and but he loved Forrest Gump and he loved Lieutenant Dan and all the characters he felt like he helped make, and so we're really happy for that. And then a few years ago, 2019, you helped again with Dale Dye, and you sent us a video of that. And Dale, at a local restaurant, having his favorite beverage, was telling us how important it was to get that message from you that night and how much it meant to him. So thank you for helping the Beaufort International Film Festival. And you are on our advisory board. I don't know if you know that or not. But I went to Jonathan, and if you didn't know it, it's Johnson's fault, because Gary said it's okay.
I've been giving Jonathan advice for many years.
Yeah.
Been advising him all along here.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it, I want to thank you for coming here and making the time to be with us, because it means so much to everyone here and to Beaufort and to the Beaufort International Film Festival. And this is a flame, and it is designed to give to a person who gives back. And that was this is the eternal flame that says this person is on fire. It was really giving back to the country, and we present that to you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.